Yeah, it's just really, inflation is the big one.
Okay.
That's what I'm reading.
It's a little higher right now,
It's
right?
higher,
Two
yeah.
something.
But even right now, I mean, they're still saying it's gonna be fine. They're just saying it's temporary.
When people are spending all their stimulus checks. Yeah.
And tax return money.
You're unmuted on here, just FYI.
What's that?
You're unmuted on here. So this is actually worse
Hey guys, how are you?
Mike was kind enough to bring the space heater down for people that are freezing cold. So.
Oh, are you cold?
So-
My run down here was 65.
That's good.
Good
Keep
for
it going.
you. Yeah. So maybe you want to sit further away from it, so you're in a good spot. It is a little bit better. But
I like sugar.
I roll and dress warm.
yeah,
And it's stuck right.
it's I don't like it.
It's Mr. Lane, so it's probably.
Oh, yeah.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
You staying down here?
I'm not sure. IT is working on my computer at the moment, so I can't do anything.
Is there coffee in there?
No,
Oh,
I think we made individual K-pops.
I thought I saw you like.
No.
Allergies. She's gonna coffee filter to blow her nose.
Hey, I've done worse things.
I think the weirdest thing ever is a coffee filter or cleaning up spills probably.
Left click is forward. Right click is back.
This one on the mouse. Oh.
Yeah, so it seems counterintuitive because right click
Oh, I got you.
is, yeah.
Before you use zeros.
So the volume on the
So,
projector volume is muted. Okay. So if you want, I could turn this up if people wanna ask questions or whatever.
start.
Yeah.
Could somebody on Zoom put in the chat log if they can hear us?
Where is it?
I'll log in my phone, make sure.
Here's the chat. She can hear us.
Oh, okay.
What's up, White House? Who is gonna monitor? Should we do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can.
Where can we see it?
Leave it there, but it's gonna be on the screen for everybody to see.
I can. Monitor that way.
Whatever you.
Is that okay?
1,200 bill, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Definitely wherever
Okay.
1 year needs to be up.
Yeah, I like doing classes. That's why we have career night with 2 people.
I guess you've got the Zoom there?
I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Okay. That's weird. So. That's right. It's not your age. Did you email out the Zoom link for this? Okay.
Well, I posted it on Facebook. I didn't-
Okay, I'll go there.
Is there
Hello.
somebody that needs it?
For me, so I can
Oh.
monitor the chat. Guys, we're gonna get started in about 1 minute here. Oops. There. We're still adjusting to this hybrid world, so I'm going to be monitoring the chat. Chris is kind of gonna run the discussion, and then I'll be adding in some commentary as we go as well here, so. What's your favorite pump it up song, like right before an event, or like a softball game? What's yours?
Yeah.
Something with energy.
Yeah.
AC/DC.
I like to like be calm,
You like it to be calm?
because I'm like super like high, like anxiety. I need like something to calm me down.
So classical.
Like on my way to my softball game on Sunday,
Yeah,
I would listen to like calming waves.
that works.
I always like doing that. Let's go, let's.
That's a good hotel. Should I?
That's one of the other video.
As long as it pumps you up. Pumps me up. Julie.
She's gonna go.
So we got 300.
8.
Oh, there's 8?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
All right, we have Christine Williams, Karen Wakata, Howell's here. Woo woo. And someone is on the treadmill. Christine, great. All right. Hi.
Ready? Are you started? Think we're ready? All right. Good, it is morning. Yeah, good morning. Thanks for being here. It's actually awesome to have this in person and have people and see faces and not, we can see chins and smiles and not masks.
Jason, hello. Let's go around the room to introduce ourselves. I know we've got some people in Zoom world and then some people in the room with us, and that's gonna be the digital space that we are, this is the new normal now. So,
Yeah,
online, we have, I'm not turning from my phone here. Terry Hammond, Shannon Sashko, Christine Williams, Candy Howell, and Karen, welcome. And in the room, just go around quickly and say who you are to those who may not know you.
Cindy Otanoga, Yola Holly.
Tim Vanderwall.
Anna Maria Valencia. Mara Collins. Laura Kubicki.
Laura Kubicki.
And I'm Chris Moscarino.
And I'm Allison DiMichele. Welcome. We are happy to have everybody here. And today's conversation, Chris kind of prompted this, and we got a lot of this information at Family Reunion with Gary Keller. And so we've adapted this to as market of the moment update, like specific right today. And we're going to go over things that you can be using as conversation points with your clients, so you can be more well educated about what's going on right now and answer myths and questions
Yeah,
that are
just-
common.
Just better to have more educated conversations with the consumer out there, because I know every day we're getting the question or we're getting the comments that, oh, I'm gonna wait another year until prices come down, or are we in another bubble, is it going to pop? So I know I'm getting those questions, I'm literally probably having that conversation every day, and so I'm assuming most other realtors are as well. So we just want to go over these things and kind of look at it at a higher level, backed by data, instead of just what some opinions are. And this is not anything I put together. This is from Adam Bergenrother Companies. So it's his economic update. So I'm just piggybacking off of what I've learned from him and sharing it with you guys. So, and he's gotten his data from some of the top economists across the country, a lot of it from Keller Williams. So this is just, again, no opinions really, just data we're going to go over with you.
So it's interactive, so if you have questions, feel free to participate.
Yes,
Alright.
so first thing is we are going to talk about is just the opportunity in the industry right now. So 328 million is the US population, 128 million households, 83 million homeowners, and last year we had 5.6 million home sales. So that is actually up from previous years. This is the highest home sales we've had since 2007, I think it was, which I think is on the next slide, and $84 billion in commissions. So when we keep hearing that there's no opportunity or the market is, sluggish or whatever the case may be, or there's no inventory, there's definitely things going on. Homes are selling. There's a lot of opportunity there, $84 billion worth of opportunity, which is what we should be focusing on. And more so, the 5.6 million homes is what we need to be focusing on versus anything else. And that's just one-sided. So if you have two sides there, that is a little over 11
A
million.
little over 11, yeah.
So,
And this does not include things like mortgage, title, or insurance.
yes.
So what is inflation?
So want to go over and really understand inflation and all these other components to the market. So inflation refers to an environment of generally rising prices of goods and services within our economy. As general prices rise, the purchasing power of the consumer decreases. 1.7%, which is, now this is the average as of beginning of April. Okay, so I'm going to go over the updated numbers right now. So as of April, we're at 1.7 estimated inflation. So that means that a product bought today for $100 is going to cost about $101.70. Make sense? All right. So 2019, we had an average of 2.3. 2020, we had inflation of 1.4%. And as of April, we were at 1.7%. Now, once the April numbers came out, which are out now, it rose to 4.2%. And now they're predicting May to be even a little higher than that, which those numbers come out in 2 days. So we're gonna have a better idea of where inflation is. Now, why we need to watch this is because obviously with prices increasing so much, we're going to start having to look at affordability. Now, if it gets too crazy, the Fed is going to have to regulate that by possibly raising interest rates and getting control back over the inflation to bring it back down. However, what they are talking about is that even though we're having this increase April, May, possibly June, that it is temporary. But this is something definitely we have to keep an eye on because this could create a whole different market third and fourth quarter, depending if this continues to rise the way it is. Now, a healthy inflation rate is around 2%. So that's kind of where we want to be around.
Right, so as the inflation rate rises, so will
Interest rates.
interest rates.
Yes, and not just home interest rates. This is interest rates that banks loan money to other banks, loans on cars, things of that nature. So it's going to affect a bunch of different things, not just the housing market.
The economy, GDP is private consumption plus gross investment, plus your government investment, plus government spending, plus exports and imports. So government spending are things like railroads, military, infrastructure, things that they're investing in. And private consumption is obviously what we buy. So GDP is an indicator of our economic health. And as it grows, that means the economy is getting healthier.
Yes. Yeah, and 2020 was 3.5%, which, and I think this number is awesome and staggering at the same time, almost $21 trillion.
So how many zeros is that, Chris? That's
I
a lot
don't
of
even know,
zeros.
I can't count that. So it's just a huge number, and a healthy GDP is between 2 to 3%. So that's a healthy economy. So that's kind of where we want to see that average be with it.
So if you think about this like a balance sheet, the GDP total is like your revenue, and then the 2020 GDP number, that percentage there, it's kind of like your net.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an awesome graph just to see where the GDP was before COVID, during COVID, and where it ended up. So 2019, you can't hide that bar by chance, can you? So first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, all in that 2% range, which was a healthy GDP rate. Then we had the negative drop in quarter one of last year. Obviously, COVID hit in March, so we're going to see that. And then everything shut down, which is why we saw that drastic negative 31%, which is the largest single quarterly drop in history that we've ever had in GDP.
Yeah, so Q2 right here, this number, this is when the shutdown and the lockdown was in full speed ahead. So GDP is fueled by consumer spending. What wasn't happening in that period of time? Were we eating out, going to movies, traveling? Those are massive parts of that equation. And then things gradually started to open back up. So it was a huge swing. We've never seen numbers like this before. These are historical numbers. And conversely, on the other side, back in business, and then it starts to stabilize.
And with that too, we had all the stimulus money, government started printing money, so it was pumping and injecting back into the economy, which is also part of the reason that we had such massive GDP growth in that quarter. And then a little back off in quarter four. And then here is kind of historically the GDP level. So again, you can see once we start getting into that 4% range. So we had 89, 90 is when we had the drop here. Then in the 2000s, we had the dot-com bubble when GDP was getting too high. Then 08, 09, we started seeing it getting high in 05, 04, 05, and we had that bubble. And now ever since then, though, we've been in this really steady, healthy growth over the last decade until COVID in 2020.
But you see how it's cyclical. History always repeats itself, so this is nothing new. So that's why when we're having, as we progress through these slides, we want to have educated conversations with our customers and our clients to say, history is going to repeat itself. This just prepares you to be more educated.
Yes, and before you jump, we haven't hit those numbers yet, though, where it starts becoming a concern for us. So we haven't hit those high 3s or high 4s where we're going to see that turnaround in the economy or that shift in the economy yet. Income. This was a fascinating slide for me, and it really did help put some things in perspective. So I think a lot of us were under the impression that people lost money last year, or people's incomes dropped last year. So with the recovery of the job market, it began to generate consistent wage gains compared to 2000 and 2012, which experienced negative 4% to 1% wage, I guess, what's the opposite word of gains? Wage losses?
Wage losses.
Yeah. So we actually had wage losses, especially during 08, 09 with the financial crisis. Positive gains in annual income can fuel housing demand. Housing starts are surging even with COVID, and incomes increase in 2020. So the average household income was $89,000 in 2019. So that's taking everybody's income all across the country, millionaires, people that make $20,000 a year and averaging that out.
So this would include if you had people that moved in with their parents.
Yes.
Like the 20-year-old, 19-year-old college grad, whoever moved in with their parents, that includes their income as well. So if somebody would have lost a job, somebody moved in that had a job, that all is factored into that. So the median number here, the 68.4, that means 50% of people made more than that number and 50% of people made less than that. That is the average, right in the middle.
So what's awesome to point out about these is almost a $10,000 increase in 2020 in household income. So what does that do for people that want to go out and buy things? More buying power, they want to go buy a house, they can afford more house, so that things just became more affordable. And the median is up actually about $4,000 from 2019, which those are staggering numbers. You don't see that kind of jump. Now, part of that too was because of stimulus and people getting those increases in their bank account every couple weeks.
And a lot of people were saving that money. They didn't always just go out and spend it and go on vacation, they were saving it.
Right.
So unemployment, let's talk about what unemployment actually means. People with jobs are employed, right? Makes sense. People who are jobless, actively looking for a job and available for work are unemployed. The labor force is made up of the employed and the unemployed. People who are neither employed nor unemployed are not in the labor force. So guess who is included in this number? Independent contractors.
Raise your hand.
If you're a business owner, as an independent contractor, you are not included in the labor force.
This is small business owners to independent contractors, anything of that nature. They're not even included in these numbers. Can you see that? And those are also people that are just not employed but not looking for a job either.
Right.
Okay.
So if you look at this, let's look at 2019, 3.6% of people unemployed. This jumps up to 6.7% of people at the end of the year 2020. A healthy number is about 6%. 2020 at its highest, 14.8%. So who lost their jobs? What industry would you say lost their jobs the most in 2020? Hospitality. That's broad. That's travel. That's restaurants, going out to eat, anything that is extra that we didn't really need. Who kept their jobs?
Amazon employees.
Amazon, medical professionals, construction workers, all those people were doing just fine. So that was the biggest spike right there.
And yeah, I think you mentioned like a healthy unemployment level is around 6% or under that. So we're not that far off. And even with the numbers now in 2021, I think we are close to that 6% number. I don't think they've, I think that comes out either this week or next week, the unemployment numbers. And I think they're predicting it to be right around 6 or a little under that right now. So this is historically unemployment levels that you can see. So 3.9% back in 47. We reached a high in 82 of 19 points, or 9.7%. 06, 07 was 4.6. Then we had the crash and went back up to 9.6% in 2010. And then in 2020, we reached these crazy highs again, but it's dramatically dropping. Oh, the slides here.
So home ownership has been steadily declining from almost 67% in 2008 to a low of 64% in 2018. And the rate crept back to almost 66% in 2020. And if you look down here, it shows you the percentages there. But first-time home buyers, this is the number that really increased. So historically, it's been around 30%. But first-time home buyers, because home ownership and the rates have been so affordable, that's been forefront in the news that the media has been covering. And so if you're a renter and you look at what you're paying each month to rent a place that you don't own and you don't have the freedom to do whatever you want in, what are you gonna do? Maybe you don't want that responsibility of home ownership, but 10% more people sure did. They looked at the numbers and they said, hey, you know, I've had roommates for years now, 4 of you guys, and we're working from home a lot more. I'm tired of looking at your face. I want you off the couch so I can have my own couch to lay on. I'm gonna own my own place.
Yeah.
So that was a huge,
So another thing that ties into this too is why we're seeing this a lot is a lot of millennial buyers or younger buyers that went out and bought houses, you know, 2010 to 2012, have all this equity in their house now. And a lot of their friends or family see this and are thinking like, wow, interest rates are so low. I want to be able to cash in on that equity at some point. I should go out and buy a house. So that's a lot of what we're seeing here. And what's also really interesting about these numbers is homeownership was at its highest in 2004 at almost 70%. And then it dropped dramatically, I think in 2008, yeah, 64% in 2008. Now we're starting to climb back up. Think about how big, even though it seems like a small percentage, when you're only taking 5.6 million homes and adding 3% more buyers to that, that's a lot of inventory that's not there right now.
yeah, so that 2008 number, that includes people that were foreclosed on,
Right.
people with delinquencies, people that couldn't afford to keep up with the maintenance of their house anymore.
And think about all those people that couldn't buy a house and now all of a sudden can, that are just re-entering the market. So you're talking about home sales again, which is also really interesting. So 2020 will come close to the all-time high, which was in 2005, where we almost had 7+ million homes sold. So that's almost 14 million transactional size. 2010 was at 4.3 million. We're finally getting in 2019, which was the highest since 05, I think it was, or 06. And then 2020, we're at 5.6 million, and they're estimating 2021 to be closer to 6 million.
So this is comparing, the light gray is 2019, the darker gray is 2020. The home sales month over month. So January through December. Check out December of 2020, you guys.
November.
Who says, in November, who says homes don't sell at the holidays? That proves it right there. They sure do, especially last year. Everybody wanted more space to entertain at their homes, and
What an
you
awesome,
experienced it.
what an awesome graph to include in your listing presentation, when, especially around the holiday season. Saying, oh, you don't think houses sell, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Well, check this out. It actually went up. And actually, it's one of the first, I think it was the first December where inventory levels were at the lowest, I think, ever.
I think it shows that too.
in one of the slides,
Yeah.
yeah.
This does not include new construction, by the way. These are existing homes.
That's it. Yeah. No, but this is a cool graph just to see where home sales were back from '89. All crept all the way up through '05 and then dropped off, and now we're starting to get back. And the median here, or no, that's 2020 sales.
Housing inventory from 2014 to 2017 dropped a national average of 3.9 months, crept up to 4 months in 2019, and then dropped again to 3.1 months for 2020 average. So what this means is, in a balanced market, if, let's say there are 300 homes on the market, it would take 6 months for all of those homes to be sold. With everybody that's, if nothing else came on the market, with everybody that's looking to buy a home, 1.9 months is what we experienced in the last part of 2020. Well, in December rather,
Yeah.
December. So the idea that there's not enough inventory, that's a myth. The reality is that there's not enough listed inventory. So you have the same amount of inventory or more that's coming on the market with new builds, and all those additional buyers are coming into that pool. So when our clients say, hey, there's not a lot of inventory, it's not enough listed inventory. So that's where we as problem solvers and a person that can go in and find a home for a person has to get creative. And
there's more off-market deals happening right now than ever before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where we can be a fiduciary to our clients too, and looking for those off-market properties. I know it's not as easy as it sounds sometimes, but they're out there, and for sale by owners, they're willing. Most of them are willing to work with realtors. But it gives us an opportunity, and if we're able to effectively communicate these statistics to the consumers, it's going to help the conversation and hopefully finding more homes.
so this is inventory from 1999 all the way through 20. So what was happening in this period of time? More houses were coming in the market because of the housing crash.
So something I want to kind of be clear, because this is the conversation too that comes up, is a lot of consumers are like, oh, we're waiting for the market to crash, or we're waiting for it to come down. We were in a very heavy buyer's market here, right? And it kind of put this perception in everybody's head that when they start seeing the housing going up and this happening, that we're going to run back into 08, 09 again. And that's just not really the case. I mean, this was one of the only times in history that we saw that home prices devalued by that much. So even if we settle down or slow down a little bit, they're predicting prices not to drop. They're still predicting prices to stay where they're at, or even maybe appreciate 1% to 2%. So even with that slowdown, what we have to try to communicate to our buyers and sellers is that if you wait, if interest rates go up, the houses are going to be even less affordable than if you were to buy now.
Right. So there are a lot of charts out there from lenders where you can say, hey, if you have a $300,000 budget, you can get an interest rate at this percentage and have that as your payment, or an interest rate at this interest rate at a lot lower and have a very reduced payment. So this happened for a very specific reason with bad lending practices. Yeah. So that's not ever going to happen again. So people that say, hey, is there going to be a ton of foreclosures coming on the market soon? I'll just wait for the next year or two. It's not going to be like that.
And we're going to talk about that too here.
So inventory.
So monthly inventory, so we kind of went over this again. And you know what's crazy is this seemed like it would never get lower than this. At least that's what I felt. I'm like, there's no way this market can get even crazier than it is. And then it did.
Because if you notice, this was the lowest amount of inventory, but on the other slide, we saw how many sales were actually happening. So those sales were happening from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
They were there. So inventory is what is listed and available. The off-market stuff that's happening behind the scenes,
right.
A different story.
So mortgage rates, which is a huge topic of conversation, which ties into the buying power, affordability, and what most people are kind of keeping an eye on. So mortgage rates dropped to recent lows in 2020 and are expected to remain low through 2021. Everything I've been reading too, they're still gonna, even if they increase in 2022, they're still gonna be in the threes. So it's not like we're gonna get too out of control here. But what's really important to understand too is what 1% increase in mortgage rates does to affordability. So if we have a 1% increase in mortgage rates, that means that equates to 10% in affordability on a house. So you have a $300,000 house, interest rates go up 1%, now you can afford 270.
10%, yeah, it's a 10% less buying power
Right.
for every 1%. So as we consider how inflation affects these numbers, if inflation keeps going up, the interest rates will start to go up because the feds are gonna come in and stabilize that, because if rates are going up or if prices are going up, the wage increase is not always in line with that, to be able to have people's wages that they're making at their jobs, be able to afford what those rates are coming in.
So where are we at? Mortgage rates.
Rates are low, they're low.
Since January of 14, so these are quarterly rates. So they've hovered in that, where'd you go?
Sorry, I went to annual because I think this is way more exciting.
Okay, cool.
Can you imagine 16?
Yeah. So I mean, you all heard this story where we were at in the 80s, and then, you know, this is the average, I believe, the scroll average. And ever since 08, 09, we got under that 6%, and we've kind of hovered in that 4-ish% range ever
Yeah,
since.
they're saying what, 4.5 to 5 after things stabilize will become more normal.
Yeah.
So the rates are still historically incredibly low.
Yeah.
So people need to take advantage of that.
And I think even Gary said back in Mega Camp that he would be surprised if we see interest rates really ever get over 5% again, depending on obviously what happens, but it'll be a long time before they even get up there. But even to hit that, we're talking quite a few years out.
Yeah.
So median home price rose from 271,300 in 2019 to 297,000 in 2020, for a 9% gain. So the 30-year average is 4%. 2019, we experienced 4.8%. 2020, we were at 9%. So I know we all felt that. Now, year to date, we're already at an additional 9% in home prices appreciated. And what they're predicting is another 2 to 5% throughout the remainder of the year. So essentially, we're going to kind of see things starting to slow down as far as appreciation and home values go.
So on this slide, you can see the relationship. This is January of 2020 through December of 2020, how the home prices appreciated, and look what interest rates did. So they kind of intersected there. So now houses are appraised or appreciated at a higher amount, but the interest rates are lower. So the affordability factor.
So essentially, what you would have paid here is pretty much the same.
Like what your monthly payment would be, because that's what people are looking at. How much is this going to cost me a month?
Exactly.
That's about a month.
And maybe even a little less than what it is here.
Because I think you can still get better rates on 15-year loans probably.
Right. Love this graph. So I think a lot of us have seen this before, and this is home prices annually and the rate of like the long-term 4% average incline. So this line is where they kind of predict home values are going to continue to appreciate over time, which we were on that pace up until things got out of control in 06, 07, 08. And then we had this drop off. And home values have been taking a while to get back to where the actual 4% inflation rate is in homes, which we are finally back to. So the conversation I'm having with clients of mine and people I'm talking to is I'm explaining this graph to them. When they think housing is expensive or not affordable, I'm like, well, actually, if you look historically over the last 30 years, we're right in line with where home prices need to be and should be right now. So I know it may seem like that, Mr. Buyer or Mr. Seller, but in reality, we're you're not overpaying for this home.
And the market that you sell in is the market that you buy in. So you're gonna make more on your purchase, on your sale.
Yeah.
And then you will have that money to apply to the purchase of your home as well. Anything you would add to that, Sal?
No, just again, like 06, this is where we saw the drop off, which is why everybody has this stuff in their head, and I know we know that. Again, that was the only time that we've had this substantial drop in home prices. No other time in history has it ever been that low, and everything I'm reading and everything I'm hearing, I don't think we're ever gonna get to something like that again, or at least for a while.
I don't think so.
Affordability, so nationwide average household would need to spend 16% of their income to buy a median price home. So that's what it is in 20%. So if you make $100,000, $16,000 is going to interest and principal for your mortgage payment. This is what home affordability has been over since the 70s. Obviously spiked in the 80s, and then ever since the crash, it's came down a lot, and it's been hovering in that 15 to 17% range. And what I think you would like to see is 20% or under. So as long as we're in that affordability line of 20% or under, that's a good place to be. If you can get it lower, then kudos to you.
Distress sales, these are foreclosures, these are short sales. Obviously, that period of time, that 08 to 12 period of time, there were a lot. Look what's happening down here. Lenders realize they don't want to be in the business of owning homes. They would rather work with buyers and say, we understand you're having some issues here, let's work this out instead of foreclosing, because at the end of the day, there's a lot more equity that is there to be had.
Yeah, and that's the big conversation, because I know we're getting that question a lot. Oh, is there going to be a lot of foreclosures? There's going to be a lot of short sales. The answer really is no. And just what Allison said, lenders aren't going to go through the process. They'd rather work with the sellers, put it on the market, and sell it for more money. And let's say we do have some distressed sales, all right? We're at 1%. I mean, look at, we were at 40% in 2008, 32% in 2009. I mean, that was crazy numbers. Even if we rose 2 or 3%, it's not going to be that big of a adjustment. I mean, it's not going to affect things that much. So I don't think we're going to be seeing that. Yeah.
How is forbearance going to factor into those numbers?
So that is a
question.
good question. I'll comment briefly on it. I don't know a ton about what they're doing with forbearance, but at the same time, a lot of these sellers or homeowners that had to do that, they still have a lot of equity in their home. So even if they did get into a situation, they are going to be able to sell and probably pay off the bank before they had a foreclosure or go do any of that. Yeah. So all these numbers that we talked about before really didn't have any new home construction built into those. And this is another conversation to be had of why we're also having that inventory shortage as well. So you can see in 2005 was one of the highest years for new home starts. And this also
This line indicates 1 million.
Yeah. By the way. And this includes single family home. It also includes like apartment complexes and things like that. So it's just new home starts. But 1.7 million, 1.4 million. And then we had the crash and things totally dropped off. So when we're supposed to be at this average of 1 million and then we reduce to less than half, and we can't get back to that number until 2020, that's a lot of homes in inventory that aren't being built over the last decade. So now we have this high demand for homes, yet they haven't been built to meet that demand right now either. So I think what we're going to see, 2020 ended around 1 million new home starts. 2021, they're predicting to be, I think, 1.3-ish, 1.5. And 2022, they're thinking that they're going to be even higher than that.
Yeah, so you
This
can
is a
see,
cool graph.
yeah, this one, in the past decade, 2010 to 2019, only 5 million homes were built, new construction.
Yeah.
So that, it should have been up here, so there's about 22 million homes in that period of time that were not built.
And what I love about this is down here, 1930 to 1940, there's almost the same amount of homes built then built in 2010 and to 2020. And think about the differences in the economy then and population. I don't even know what the population is, probably 150 million maybe, cap,
Yeah.
you know? So that we only built that many homes in the past decade compared to then, I mean, that's a huge indication of why we're also in this scenario.
So the next 2 to 4 years, new construction will be skyrocketing and then it should start to level off.
Yeah, and I think over the next 5 years, you're gonna see a huge boom in new construction to start making up for a lot of this. Yeah, and what's gonna make that difficult too is lumber prices, of course, that we keep hearing about. So there's a lot going on with new construction. If, you know, new home starts are going to continue to increase at this rate. There's talk about regulating wood, and that I've even heard some builders that might even just stop building if things get too high until to build up supply to start making it more affordable eventually over the next year. So
Because the rates are criminally high right
yes,
now.
so it's just something else to keep an eye on with new home construction, just to make sure that they're hitting the numbers that they're projecting to make sure, because if things slow down in new home construction, that's going to create a whole different market for residential sales.
Yeah.
So it's another variable we need to be aware of. There's one other thing. Can you go back to that slide real quick? I don't know what I was going to say about it, so they'll come to me. Go ahead.
So commercial vacancy rates, there was no mass exodus that happened in 2020. This just shows the actual numbers here. You can see a certain, increase in office space there.
Yeah, slight increases across the board, but nothing crazy. I mean, 2014 was roughly the same as it is now.
Yeah.
So this is just distribution of wealth. So where people are putting their money. And just, I think what he was pointing out here is that in 2006, real estate was at 24%. Now it's at 15%. Stock market is relatively high. And we've seen that transition in funds go to the stock market just because of how well it's doing. So I think part of this conversation was right now would be a great time to reinvest into real estate, to have that safe haven, kind of that safety net with investments. So is this 2008 again? You want to read this part?
Lending standards. So we saw that huge graph of all that influx of homes that came onto the market. What was that from? Loose lending practices. They ultimately brought down some of the nation's largest banks and mortgage companies. The fallout forced Congress and federal regulators to make significant adjustments that have fundamentally changed how mortgage lending is regulated. So we were joking about it the other day when if you were a person that came into a bank and said, I make $300,000 a year doing X, like some
What was your,
insert, I said iguana farmer and
Iguana.
underwater basket weaver. I'm making lots of money doing that. Okay, great, you're approved for this amount of money to buy a home. We're gonna back you on that. Stated mortgage, that means I'm gonna tell you something, I don't have to prove a darn thing to you about what I'm actually making. So you have enough of that going on and people just wanna get the deal done. Think of what that happens long term. So what happens then? Foreclosures. When the housing market crashed in 2007, the influx of foreclosures pumped housing supply into areas with falling prices and weak labor markets, while also preventing recently foreclosed borrowers from re-entering the market as buyers, because they're not around. You didn't prove yourself the first time. Why are you going to get round two right away? According to the Federal Reserve, foreclosures during a time of high employment could depress prices, plunging homeowners across the country deeper into negative equity. So there were 9 million people that lost their homes and $70 billion in equity. Is that right?
9
$7 million?
billion in equity, wasn't it?
I wrote it down. Hold on. I have it in my notes.
But what it also is like when this happened too, it wasn't just housing, like there was massive jobs lost across construction industries, across trade industries. So there was all these things that were hitting the market other than just housing. But it all stemmed from this.
7 billion
7
in
billion.
equity.
And that's-
So people
Which is
weren't
still
even,
staggering. That's a huge number.
yeah, and so people weren't even necessarily always thinking of that option to sell, because if you think about the feeling, the psychological effect of that, of getting foreclosed on, a lot of people were embarrassed. They didn't want to tell anybody what was going on with their finances. So if you have clients like that in this position now that do have that equity, but maybe you're falling behind on their payments, you could go in as a solution-oriented conversation and say, hey, if you have equity, we can talk about selling, and just explain what their different options are that they may not even be aware of.
And I think that's part of the problem is sellers don't even know what their house is worth or the equity they have in it. So they think logically the best thing for them to do is foreclose on a home, when it's probably not.
What does it do to your credit for long-term buying options for people? It's not a good plan. You don't have to.
So the equity, which we just talked about, we know what equity is, appreciation. The sales boom followed the outbreak of COVID-19 and surprised many real estate economists. Like most other business sectors, real estate was expected, if not required in many locations, to lock down. But by mid-April, sales were soaring as buyers, many of them millennials, took advantage of record low mortgage interest rates. Through the remainder of 2020, rates remained below 3% and existing home sales reached their highest level in 14 years.
So this will be different because this time around, people buying homes are not financing as much of the purchase.
Right.
They're putting down bigger chunks of cash. So they've got that cushion in there where it's not all owned by the bank. So that's another big difference.
And I think we all know that too, because of the multiple offers. You guys we're all looking at who's got the best financing, who's putting the most money down. So here's the forecast for 2021. Home sales forecasted to hit right around that 6%, $6 million, 6 million sales. So almost 12 million on both sides, which is about a 4.6% increase. Median home price is going to be $317,000, which is a 7% forecasted growth. And month supplies of inventory, we're going to level off around that 3.3 months of inventory.
And I believe this does not include new
That
construction.
is not new
Again.
construction. No, that's just existing home sales. You want to talk about second home market sale?
So in a recent survey, 40% of agents reported increased interest in clients in second and vacation homes now that they can work from home and do extended periods of time. So if you're on a Zoom call, if you're in Zoom world as your job all the time and you don't have to be face to face, you could finish up your Zoom call and go ahead and go skiing. Whereas before you might have been stuck in Kansas and Tornado Alley. So it's just different. So it's adapting the way we are doing life right now that has taught people to think differently about what their options are. Like if you've always wanted to travel and live somewhere on an island and you have great internet reception, what's stopping you? Your boss doesn't care. You're still showing up to work and doing the thing. So why not?
And if you've been in some of these secondary markets, you're probably seeing this too. The impact will be low inventory and rising prices in these markets, which may spur an increase in new construction in these areas.
Right, so that's hyper local. So you were talking about going down
In Naples,
to Naples,
it's being
Florida.
down there right now. There's 0 homes for certain price ranges currently, and the new construction down there is out of control. Like you have to, you actually, it's like a lottery down there where you have to put your name in, and if you get picked to build a new home, you're one of the lucky ones that gets it. Like it's absurd what's going on, but that's where it is. And until new home construction catches up a little bit, it's going to probably be like that for the next year or so.
Yeah, so keep that in mind for referrals as you're having conversations with people that are ready to get out of the great CLE and move on to different greener pastures.
I'll be done.
What's the outlook? What's going to happen? We expect appreciation to remain elevated in the first half of 21 and taper off in the second half of the year, but it's always dependent on inventory levels, right? So if they're lower than anticipated, prices could grow near double digits. Inventory will need to increase this year if home price gains are going to stay in the range that we consider sustainable in that 4 to 6% range. Affordability is likely going to become an increasingly common topic in the news, so people are focusing on that now that the COVID conversations are kind of tapering down. Now it's affordability, getting people to talk about it. Maybe you've never thought about owning a home, maybe you've never wanted to, now's the perfect time. So if we see rapid price gains in the first half of the year, it may temper demand and slow sales later in the year because people just can't afford it. They just can't. But you know, your buyers right now, some people are like, I'm out. I'm not doing this right now. They don't have a strong enough desire or need, or they're just getting shot down after their 25th offer is rejected.
And I think what these slides are very accurate. I'm feeling it a little bit that inventory is increasing right now. So I think that's a good sign. There's still a lot of demand though, but I was just telling Laura, like a few of the houses that we lost out on this week, instead of it being 15 to 20 offers, it was like 9 or 10 offers. So a little better. But, you know, so it's just, you know, something to keep an eye on. And there's that summer slowdown. A lot of people are going on vacation in June and July. So we may have more opportunity to get buyers in and slip in and get a home here. So that I have a couple buyers too that were like, we're going to take a break. And I'm like, no, now is not the time to take a break. Like now is the time to stay in it because we're going to have a better chance right now with this summer possible slowdown, which really isn't even a slowdown, to get a house. The other thing, this is just my opinion, so I'm going on record saying this, is we're looking at all of this, and typically we know what happens in the winter months is inventory levels decrease and everything slows down. Well, we saw what happened this past December, and now inventory levels are even lower. So if that trend continues, it could cause even more demand and prices to increase even more.
So that's kind of a real Merry Christmas.
Yes. So that's just my opinion, but who knows? There's a lot of these things we got to keep an eye on for the next 2 quarters. So we are likely going to continue to see the largest price gains in the entry-level portion of the market as this segment continues to have the lowest inventory levels. Bubble concerns. As home prices continue to rise, we need to begin paying attention to lending standards and anything that seems like a creative way to get households who otherwise would struggle to purchase the home into the market. As of right now, we haven't seen any strong resurgence in this type of lending.
Right, so which is why it pays to work with a lender that's reputable, that has the long-term outlook of sustainability in the real estate world in mind. Tim, were you gonna add something?
Yeah, just something to kind of along that line, make sure you're working with lenders that are being upfront and honest.
Yeah.
I am working through a deal right now where we had a conventional approval, conventional all the way through, and all of a sudden we get to closing, they're like, we can't do this conventional, we gotta switch to FHA. I'm like, well, when did you know this? Oh, 3 weeks ago. I'm like, and you didn't tell me? Like, I've been asking you if everything's okay. I've been following up. So just word to the wise out there, lenders are, because they know, like we know, you want that conventional pre-approval. Because you're gonna walk in with an offer that's stronger than an FHA. So there's ones out there that are doing that, and then I'm calling it bait and switch.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
Just be careful.
and that's why we have preferred lenders.
Right.
So,
People that are vetted, because we ask them all the hard questions.
and that's it.
Any questions?
Comments? Things you're hearing that we didn't talk about.
I'll talk about
Yeah.
that comment. So we're seeing lenders too, besides just doing the employment verification, they're saying what's the likelihood that your job will continue? And if they're coming back medium and not high, that could jeopardize the whole deal.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that too. It's something to talk to your buyers about, like if you're not gonna have your job in a year, the lender will find out. And before they would just say, do you have your job now? But now they're asking, will you have your job in the future?
Yeah, and to that point too, the lenders are following up with the employers 2, 3, 4, 5 times
Right.
throughout this process to make sure they still have a job.
Yeah, that was happening early 2020. They were
Yeah.
supposed to be closing on Monday and then call the employer on Friday to
Yeah.
see if they actually still had a job. A lot of deals fell apart like that.
Just inventory wise locally, I tracked the numbers, and we're at below a month inventory. What, being from Medina is 20-mile radius of Medina. But Cuyahoga County, I haven't done the numbers for today yet. Last week, they were at 1.07 months of inventory.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those numbers that were up there were national.
Yeah, those are
Right,
national.
so it's not
averages,
the hyper
right,
local,
Yeah.
right?
So we're there.
Yeah, and it's important, like, use these and update them accordingly to fit our local, market. And that's when we become the local economist of choice too. Where we get hyper local, have these hyper conversations with our clients to really get them to understand the market we're in, and not just what they're hearing on the news or hearing from a friend that heard it from a friend that heard it from that friend. So I love those conversations.
Any other questions, comments?
Anything on, we got one?
Any other chats? I think somebody's saying hello.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions or comments in Zoom world here? You can unmute yourself if you do.
How was this? Was this helpful? Like, was
This
this
is awesome.
awesome?
Anything, any aha or takeaway that you were not expecting that you got, or a statistic that you thought you might have known, or something to help educate your client that you were surprised that you didn't know?
I think the building in the past decade was crazy to see
Yeah.
how far behind we've been.
And what I love with this is like the data and the numbers tell a story and they don't lie. So this is raw data we can go off of to back what we're telling everybody.
I'd love to see these Ohio, like just Ohio or just northeastern Ohio, but
Yeah.
any volunteers for that?
Or did we miss anything? I know you and I have been talking about this stuff every day.
Can we get a copy of these?
Sure.
We'll make a better presentation.
Exactly.
$100 a slide.
I think the key, you guys hit on it a number of times, but I really think the key when you're talking with people who have this bubble bursting mentality, they think that the world's coming to an end, is, I mean, the numbers show it, and you can categorically show them that we are nowhere, we aren't even in the same region, or in the same nation as what was going on during that time. That time was so unprecedented in what was going on. There is no bank out there lending that's doing anything even close to what they were doing then. So, I mean.
It's suicide for those banks. It
Oh,
would be
yeah,
like
I mean, well,
devastate the
they
world
can't.
for them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Long
suicide,
term, it just doesn't make sense.
And the federal regulations aren't, I mean, they're not allowing them to do that anymore for obvious reasons. So, I mean, just having that data to show them, hey, could there be some equity loss or, in short term? I truly believe there will be. I think people are buying high right now. We all know it. Everything's selling high. Short term, yeah, you can see a little bit of a dip, but longer term, it's gonna even itself out, because we're not going to have the foreclosures and the short sale, because it's not creating that right now. The equity loss is not going to be on the bank side where they have to foreclose.
Right.
It's gonna be someone that says, oh, I wanna sell my house now that I paid $250 for it in early 2021, and here it is 2025, and it's only worth $230. Well, the bank only.
See, but that right there, they're not even predicting happening. So that it may never get to that either. Because even with everybody overpaying right now, the comparables are gonna catch up eventually with all the neighborhoods. So, and then with them saying appreciation is still gonna accelerate at 1 to 3, 2 to 4, somewhere in that range. I mean, ideally, in what they're describing, they're still gonna gain equity in their home. So, but we don't have that crystal ball either, so we don't know for sure what's gonna happen.
It's right by my money tree in the backyard.
Yes.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna
Yeah,
end the Zoom
appreciate it.
here. We appreciate everybody showing up. Come to the team meeting tomorrow. We'll be back for more fun.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.